There we go. Alrighty. Make sure my sound is good. Okay. Hello. So good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Joel Martin. I'm the CEO and instructor at Jumpstart with Joel. Tutoring and educational services we offer to adolescent and adults. Hey, Nikki, how are you? Adolescent and adult students. I don't know why you only get my notifications on Periscope. Is the sound okay? Let me know, please. I'm trying to make sure everything is right. I think it is. So, I hope that everybody's having an awesome, awesome day. So, for about the past week or so, we've been going over fractions. And like I said before, fractions can be a little challenging, especially if you're not that familiar with them. But once you get to understand how they work, once you get used to fractions, it is not that difficult at all. So one of the things I'll be discussing today is equivalent fractions. And there's been some confusion about this as well. Equivalent fractions are basically fractions. Let me pull up my other screen. There we go. So equivalent fractions are just fractions that are, there we go. Hey Katrina, how are you? Thank you for sharing that out. I appreciate it. They're fractions that have different numbers, but they represent the same size. So usually when you're doing equivalent fractions, usually it's two fractions that you'll see, and they have different numbers, but they represent the same size. Sometimes you'll have a model or you'll have an illustration, like we have some rectangles here. I'm getting ready to show you what the equivalent fractions are. Other times it may be numbers. You may see something with just numbers on it, and you have to figure out what the equivalent fraction is. So the first thing I'll show you is if you're working with a picture, a model. Thank you for the hearts, Nikki. I appreciate it. If you're working with a model, so for instance, with this one, let me get my pen. This model is going to be 1/2. We've got our rectangle line down the middle. We've got two parts. We all know that the denominator represents the total number of parts. So the denominator here is 2 because we've got two parts. And the 1, the numerator, is going to be the part that's shaded. So I'm going to get my little highlighter and I'm going to shade in this 1/2 of this rectangle. Okay. So here we have a rectangle. We've shaded in 1/2 of it, and this fraction is 1/2. Aw, thank you. I appreciate that, Katrina. Thank you. That's so sweet of you. So then we look at the rectangle next to it. Now this rectangle, get my pen, this rectangle has 4 parts. Okay? This rectangle has 4 parts, and we're going to shade in the same size, the same side as well as our first fraction. But because it has more parts, the numerator is going to be different, and so is the denominator. So we'll shade this in. And this represents 2/4. Because in this rectangle we have 4 parts, and these 2 parts here are shaded in same size, like our definition says. It's the same size as the 1/2, same size, but it's more parts. Okay, then we go over here to the last rectangle. This rectangle, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, has 8 parts, and even though it has more parts, this left side of this rectangle, we're going to shade this in. It's going to be the same size as all of the other fractions, but the numbers are different because it has more parts. So let me get my highlighter and I'll shade this in. I went outside the line a little bit, but that's okay. So this side, this fraction now represents this model. The fraction is 4/8. We shaded 4 parts in, and the denominator, the total amount of parts, is 8. So if we were to do the math in order to calculate these equivalent fractions, even if we were going to do the math, hello there, how are you, Prince? What we would do when you're doing fractions, and I talked about this yesterday and I've been talking about it for the past week or so. When you're doing certain calculations with fractions, whatever you do to the top number, the numerator, you do to the denominator, the bottom number. So let's say we didn't even have these pictures, these models of these fractions. All you would have to do would be to multiply both of them by the same number. You would multiply the numerator by 2 and the denominator by 2, and it equals 2/4. Same thing with 2/4. If you multiply them both by 2, it's going to give you 4/8. There are times when you may have an assignment where you'll see a fraction. I've seen these on certain tests, as well as we talked about yesterday, how sometimes you now have a lot of the adults, because of what's going on with COVID, they are changing their careers and they're going into different arenas, and now you have to take an entrance exam. Maybe you have to get your GED or your high school equivalency exam. Maybe you have to take that. And so sometimes they have these tests on these math exams, these problems rather, and it gets people confused. So you may see something where it says, what is the equivalent fraction? I've seen something that looks like this. It'll say 1/2 equals blank, and they'll give you the denominator of the new fraction. They want you to find the missing numerator on the equivalent fraction. In a case like this, what you would have to do is just look at these two numbers. We've got a 2 here and we've got an 18 here. What number, what factor did they multiply this 2 by to get 18? So if you know your multiplication facts, you know that when you multiply 2 times 9, it gives you 18. Whatever you do to the bottom or the denominator, you must do to the numerator. So same thing, you will go up here, multiply this by 9. 1 times 9 is 9. And so your equivalent fraction would be 1/2 equals 9/18. So even if you had a rectangle, like we have a rectangle up here that shows 1/2, even if you had a rectangle and it was broken down into 18 parts, 9 of those parts would still be half of that rectangle. It's still the same size. The numbers, the fractions themselves are different. Another one, and you'll see these as well, 1/2 equals blank 6. So same thing, you have to locate what is the new numerator. If you know, what number do you multiply 2 by to get 6? 2 times 3 is 6. So whatever you do to that denominator, you're going to now do to the numerator. 1 times 3. And then 1 times 3 equals 6. So 1/2 in this particular equation, this particular example, is equal to 3/6. You may even see one where the denominator is missing. 4/5 is equal to 20, and they'll have a blank here. So in this example, they gave you the numerator, but now you have to find out the denominator. If you know, whatever you do to the top number, the numerator, you do to the bottom number, the denominator, and vice versa. So you know that 4, when you multiply 4 times 5, it gives you 20. So you know you got to do the same thing to the denominator, excuse me. 4 times 5 is 20. So then you're going to take this 5 that's in the denominator now, and you're going to multiply it by 5. And you're going to get 25. And these are equivalent fractions. So when you see them, Don't get confused. Don't become frustrated. Look at the picture. If it gives you an example, a model like we have here, see if you can do the calculation. See if you can see what the missing factor is. How did they get the new fraction? And even if you don't have a model to go by or to look at, do the actual math itself. Take your time. Like I always encourage my students, whether they're adult students or my adolescent students, you must know your multiplication facts. We used to call them timetables back in the day. You have to know them. That is a life skill. Multiplication is a life skill. People sometimes don't want to memorize them. Sometimes the kids don't want to memorize them, but they're very important because once you start doing division, multiplication, fractions, even decimals, reducing fractions, all those things, even as you go forth, even throughout with algebra, you're going to have to know your multiplication facts. So I hope everybody is having an awesome day. I hope you do have an awesome day. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you again tomorrow. Have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.